Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It is August the 18th, 2021, and this is the California High-Speed Rail Authority's Board of Directors Finance and Audit Committee meeting. Welcome to you all. And we have a reasonably common meeting compared to previous meetings in terms of our agenda. I would like to advise you that we start out with public comments, and for this we will in a moment ask our secretary to advise you how you can address us. However, Mr. Secretary, will you in the interim please ensure that you have noted that all members of the committee are here and in attendance, and that now we will now move to the public comment section. And so, Mo, if you would advise all of those listening to us today how they can address this committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, all. Welcome to the California High-Speed Rail Finance and Audit Committee meeting. Today, we are hosting this meeting remotely via Zoom. In a moment, we will take public comment. First, I want to run through some important technical aspects of this meeting for offering public comment. If you are logged into this meeting via the Zoom application, please use the raise your hand feature typically located at the bottom of your screen so that I may call on you to provide your comment. If you're dialing in by phone, pressing #2 will raise your hand and put you into our queue. Speakers will be called in the order that their hand is raised. Once you've been in the queue and your name is called in the web meeting, please click the prompt on your screen to allow your microphone to be unmuted. On the phone, we will call on you by the last 4 digits of your phone number. At that point, you'll hear a message that you are being unmuted. Once unmuted, it will be your turn to speak. Please slowly and clearly say and spell your first and last name, and if applicable, state the organization you represent. After your introduction, each speaker is allotted 2 minutes to provide their comment. I will interject at 1 minute and 45 seconds to provide a 15-second warning. Our court reporter is on the line to record these comments. If they need you to spell or repeat something, they may interject. I will notify you when your time is nearly up. At the end of your comment, we will disable your microphone. However, you are welcome to stay on the line to continue watching or listening to this meeting. If you do not wish to provide comment and simply want to watch the meeting, you can do so by logging on to hsr.ca.gov and looking for the link to our live stream.
Thank you, Mo. And for those of you listening and not watching, let me let you know that the members of this committee that you'll be providing your comments to are our Board Vice Chair, Nancy Miller, and Directors Ernie Camacho and Jim Galmetti. And my name is Tom Richards. All right, Mo, who do we have?
Mr. Chairman, after providing the instructions, no attendees have motioned to raise their hand to provide public comment.
All right. Then thank you all who are listening and watching for joining us today. We will now move forward with today's agenda. First, if we can ask the members for your consideration of the approval of the July 15th committee minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Ernie and a second by Jim. All in favor?
Aye.
Passed unanimously. Thank you. Let me just make a quick comment to my colleagues. Brian Annis, who will be up here in a moment, has got another meeting that he has to attend. And I'm going to ask Brian to please step away when you need to leave. And I wanted to let the members know, in the event that you have any questions for Brian that you may not ask it during or after his presentation, please keep this in mind so you have an opportunity to address any questions to Brian before he has to leave. So with that, good morning, Brian, and welcome.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and board members. Happy to provide the Finance and Audit Committee financial report executive summary, which you're looking at now on the shared screen. We can go to the next page. So we're start the reporting with the accounts payable aging and disputes report. And again, happy to report that due to hard work by staff and keeping on top of things, we've not incurred a late payment penalty in over 4 years. And we did not have any aged invoices in the June reporting period. Our disputes are down a bit. The authority as of June had 52.1 million in disputed invoices. That's about a 6.6 million decrease month over month, primarily due to a $14.3 million reduction in disputes on the CP23 design build contract for Dragados Flatiron joint ventures. Moving to the second half of the page, the cash management report. On the table on the right side column, we report cash balances at the end of June. For Prop 1A bond funds, we recorded 129 million in cash. Cap and trade balance, $1,720 million. And we also have this rail property management fund that was $10.8 million at the end of June. A couple of notes on the cap and trade specifically. We previously reported to the board that the May auction was a record amount of an estimated 229 million coming to the authority. We still haven't recorded that cash balance because it's still working its way through the process with our fiscal control agencies. About a month after the auction, the Air Resources Board first certifies the final amounts. It goes to the Department of Finance for their work and executive orders to move money, and finally to the controller. And we always wait for the controller to finalize action before we record it as a cash available balance. There is the August auction is actually occurring today, August 18th. The results from the August auction are scheduled to be released next Wednesday, August 25th, and we'll alert the members of the Finance and Audit Committee by email when we get those results. Just a couple notes on the August auction. Like the May auction, the Air Board will be re-offering for sale some of the allowances that were previously unsold last in May of 2020 and August of 2020 due to COVID. And so last auction in May, we had that record result partially due to those unsold allowances being resold. So again, we have a potential for a better than average auction again. I will note, however, that it is typically the August auction where we have an offset that's based on the bill that extended cap and trade in 2017, AB 398. That bill takes some funding off the top, if you will, before we receive our 25%. The off the top money goes to backfill for a rural fire fee in forested areas that was removed as a landowner fee and picked up by cap and trade proceeds, and also a manufacturer's tax credit. Typically, that's in the 35 to 40 million offset range. So we may not know the exact amount for a bit of time, but again, all these factors suggest we should have a good auction. But again, we'll report that to the committee probably next Wednesday afternoon. Next page, please. This is our summary of the administrative budget and expenditures. And of course, this data is through June of 21, which is the end of the state fiscal year. So we're looking at a full year of information and expenditures at this point. Our budget for the fiscal year was 73 million. Our monthly expenditures in June was 6.7 million, which is a little higher than average due to some year-end accruals. it puts our year-to-date expenditures for the full fiscal year at about 50 million, which is a little under 70% of the budgeted expenditures. Primary reason for coming in under budget in that at that level is that we continue to fill new positions that were authorized in the 2021 budget, and we've gone from about I think our vacancy rate was as high as about 37%, and now you see it's down under 22%. So we have filled many of those vacant positions, but having them vacant for the many vacant for the large portion of the fiscal year, we did generate that savings. I believe we can go on to the next slide. This slide is somewhat repetitive, and you see the number of filled state positions on the chart here under the 2021 column at 278 filled positions out of 356 positions authorized. This also shows the rail delivery partner consultant workforce that's shown as comparison, and showing in the bar chart in the middle of the table are a conversion of many consultant activities to state staff, and that we do expect soon for the state staff number to surpass the full-time equivalents of rail delivery partner consultants. And on the bar chart on the far right, it shows what we're working toward to have 356 state staff and about 270 full-time equivalents of the rail delivery partner staff. So we continue to make progress toward that transition that we called internally the form to function. Next slide, please. This slide is our capital outlay report. Shows we at the top here, we started with a budget of $2.9 billion for the fiscal year. Our monthly expenditures for June were $175 million. Adding up expenditures over the fiscal year for the 12 months, came in about $1.2 billion for the fiscal year expenditures. That was about 41% of the budget for the fiscal year. We also show in the bullets in the middle of the page some of the specifics. First, for the construction packages, they totaled $106 million for the month of June, and we break that down by each construction package. And we also show in the next bullet design build monthly expenditures that totaled about $56 million. And we do break that down by CP, again, CP1 being 23.5 million, 2.3 being 26.6, and CP4 being 5.8. The table at the bottom also shows different categories and percentage of the budget spent. The construction expenditure, for example, came in about 49% of budget, which is actually across all of these areas a higher metric of performance on budget. The project development, for example, is a little less, about 45% or 64.6 million for the year. And then our bookend projects, Caltrain is the primary bookend project that's billing. That came in quite a bit less as well as our anticipated expenditures or reimbursement claims for the fiscal year at about 79 million as opposed to about 349 million we had budgeted. There's no questions, we can move on to the next slide.
Just a quick one, Brian. With regards to the budget totals, what is the expectation at the outset of a fiscal year with regards to the total amount of budget that ends up being approved, and what has consistently been over the years the expenditure substantially less than the budget?
Well, we do budget based on the dialogue with construction managers and contract managers on what they think they may spend in the fiscal year. We do want to make sure we have enough resources. So we don't discount the plan. We do realize there are some risk to a full expenditure that can occur through many avenues. Perhaps opening a construction site might be delayed by right of way. That might have to go to eminent domain instead of a direct purchase. Utility relocation, schedule of the utilities and their contractors to move the utilities. There's a number of things that could occur that may, in different areas for different structures, different contracts, result in a different expenditure than anticipated. So again, having the budget does allow the project manager to manage their contract to that budget. And in areas where there aren't any delays and they spend at the full amount, they're not compelled to reduce budget or slow activity. So I think the way we budget, in many cases, you'll see some areas ultimately come in a bit below budget, but that's, believe, a prudent way to budget because, again, we don't want to artificially constrain activity in the field on the different work products and the different contracts if there are no impediments. And so the managers are authorized to spend at the full level they think they might be able to achieve. And this is typical for how state budgets for office building projects or Caltrans for highway projects. But you do see that variability. And we do have an internal process as well. If something is spending certainly above budget, we do have a mechanism where we can look at that and see if it's worthy of an adjustment, if we might have savings in another area, so we can continue that activity at a higher spending level.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Yes, please, Ernie.
Brian, each of the CPs have a CM that is working for the high-speed rail benefit. And we've had extensions of time. How are we compensating them? Or do we just continue to put money into their contract?
Yeah, if I could point out the line here on the bottom chart toward the middle, there's a line that includes PCM. So I believe that's what you're speaking of,
Yes.
project construction managers. So those are contracts where we compensate based on the work performed. So, it might vary based on, say, number of design packages that they review and other factors such as that. So those are contracts that have been augmented over time through change orders, and that's something that continues to be looked at on a budget basis to see if those contracts will need further extensions going forward.
So as work develops, those CMs could ramp up more people or less people. But as I remember when I toured Fresno looking at CP23, there was an inordinate amount of people there in their offices, and I think to a total of about 40 CM type people. So those may fluctuate greater or lower depending upon the workload.
That's right. I know design has been one of the major workload drivers in the past year or two, and of course other activities of verification of the construction activity as well. But that is a variable workload. You're correct.
But is that where the ICE, ISE, and those other design validations take place? Does they come out of that budget?
I might ask Daniel if he's able to help respond to that question.
Yes, Ernie, for CP23, the independent certification engineer is in the project construction manager's budget. That's correct.
So it's not really going to that CM, it may be going to people performing a function within the CM, the overall CM contract.
No, it's just specifically for CP23.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Ernie. Go ahead, Brian.
Great. I believe we can go to the next slide. So not a lot of change on this particular slide. At the top, we do show the total program expenditures, and this goes back to 2006. We're about 8.5 billion spent, and the chart shows of that 8.5 billion, what areas that or what activities that was spent in, and construction being the largest at about 6.5 billion or 76%. No updates on the federal ARA match. Of course, we have met the match in terms of submitting all the invoices that would allow us to meet the match. The federal government in the last 6 or 8 months has approved most of these. We have 2,168 million approved out of about 2.5 billion required. So they continue to have about 350 million remaining. We do understand that they are working on those, and we hope for a favorable outcome in the coming weeks on the remaining federal match. This is just the ARA match. Of course, once we start spending the FY10 funds in a couple years, we'll also have a match for FY10. But since we haven't begun that process yet, those are not listed on this table. Next.
So the FY10 funds also require a state match?
That's correct. Yeah. This is our contracts and expenditure reports. There's a small decrease in the number of contracts we have. Some expired in June, so we report a reduction from 207 contracts in May to 199 contracts in June, as well as with those expiring contracts, some reduction in the total value of active contracts that you'll see on the second line. Our small business utilization rate was up a bit here, as indicated, at about 22.6%, which you'll note is favorable in the up direction compared to last month and compared to a year ago. And again, up substantially if you go back 5 or 6 years to February of 2015, it was about 16.2%. And as of the end of the reporting period, there were 626 small businesses actively working on the high-speed rail project, including 201 DBEs and 70 certified disabled veteran business enterprises. Next slide. Right, this is our contingency summary, and I think the most relevant numbers to look at the top chart are the remaining balance for each of the CPs. So the CP1 remaining balance is 295 million, remaining CP23 balance 218 million, and CP4 balance 93 million. These continue to be our Rev 1 baseline numbers that were approved by the board in May of 2019. Of course, in the business plan this spring, we had some updated budget numbers. We are waiting for final legislative action on the budget, and then anticipate bringing the fiscal year budget and the new baseline budget to the board in September. The bottom right table shows the total amount of change orders in the reporting month at 78 million. In this chart, we do individually list any change order over 25 million, but there were none for that reporting month. The largest two in this 78 million were reported to the board as part of the CEO report last month. Those were related to the CP1 work. There was a BNSF Railroad Access Road change order of about 24 million. and a Golden State Boulevard wet utility change order of about 19 million. So those were the largest of the change orders that were adopted in that through governance action in that month of June. Next page, please. And this last slide is what we call the flash report. It's our preliminary data for the next reporting month, which will be July. Do always want to emphasize these are preliminary numbers. Sometimes these are based on invoices that are not actually received yet. They're based on some estimates through talking with some of the contract managers and their knowledge of working with the contractors on what's expected to come. In total, the estimated capital expenditure is a bit shy of 100 million for the month of July at $98.6 million. The DB part of that is listed here at 69.4 million. A total construction package work, which adds to the design build work, the right of way, the construction management contracts, etc., at 88.7. And then the difference there to get to the 98 would be things like the project development cost and any bookend related expenditures. Just to highlight a few of the big shifts, you'll notice quite a big month-over-month increase for construction package 1. A big part of that is the recent change order I described on the prior page for the wet utility work on Golden State Boulevard. The contractor had been working at risk for some of that already. And so when that change order was executed, the payment had been withheld pending that execution of the change order. But once it was executed, those payments could go out. So that's why that's part of the estimated DB payment for construction package 1.
Ryan, that was a high-speed rail driven change order then.
It's correct. Well, and I would say, working with the third party of City of Fresno, they wanted a different alignment of Golden State Boulevard. And so that did result in some higher cost. It's no longer it's no longer moved directly beside what'll be the high-speed rail alignment, but it's moved further to the west. And that and some other changes resulted in higher cost.
Ryan, a lot of these change orders are driven by the fact that we don't have a complete design. And I think the board was told that we were supposed to have complete designs on all the packages soon. Can you give me a date as to when we're going to receive complete design for 1, 2, 3, and 4?
Yeah.
Yes. And Daniel, I think I heard your voice.
Yes, so CP4 is completed, CP1 is completed, and CP23 will be completed by the end of August, early September.
Repeat that, Dan. By the end of what?
By the end of August, early September, all the designs will be completed.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome, Jim.
I was going to make a note as well on the CP23 month-over-month change. You'll note falling from 26.6 to 12 million here. That's largely driven, by a accrual adjustment. The 26.6 number that included some estimated invoicing that was not included in the final invoice because it also would tie to a change order that had not been executed yet. So again, we're unable to, and it's not appropriate to pay any amounts before an executed change order if it's based on that work.
Yeah, my hope now that we're getting close to completing the design, that we will be able to finalize our budgets for all 4 projects. And therefore, if we do our job properly, you won't see as many change orders, if any at all, that come in. Hopefully the design is such that we'll secure that.
Jim, just to follow up on that, if I might, as we finish getting all the scope in and getting the designs to 100%, and some of the design elements that are not in part of that we also need to finalize our third-party designs, like designs we have to finish with utilities. Those are a little separate from the structures that we do with our contractors. But we're getting to 100% design on the contractor issues, as we've indicated. And as that scope gets clear, you know, the other issues then that we can land is schedule and ultimately the budget. And the budget issue, in part, at least as a cash flow matter, you know, we need to get resolution on where we are with the legislature on assuring that we have a full budget to complete our work. But once we have those three things in place, what I ultimately want to be doing with this committee and the board largely is not presenting all these various elements of where we are, elements of construction, but really just doing an earned value matrix with you that reflects where we are on schedule, cost, and scope, and that we're being able to reflect that each month. And I think that's much more direct on what you guys want to see and hear, and not go through 1,000 different elements of this project. And so, again, we're driving to get to that. We did a construction update with the board in May that talked about us driving toward that, and we will do a quarterly update to the board in October on that same thing. And hopefully we're going to get to the point where we're starting to, with CP4 first, probably 1 second, and 2, 3 third. We'll be doing all of these in a much clearer earned value metric report to you guys that'll be much clearer and much simpler on how we're doing against those metrics.
Thanks, Brian.
Brian, some of the design that you're talking about is not design of the construction, the original construction project or a package, but third-party agreements that
Yeah.
we have that have yet to be designed or are currently in design.
Currently in design. Yeah, I mean, look, just to put a finer point in that, for all the structures that we have with our contractor to get the work done, those are what we're indicating we're almost at 100% design on. There are issues, as you guys know, with doing a utility relocation that requires a design move, working with the railroads on something that requires a design change. Some of those we're still working on, and we're still in that sense, we're still in the pre-construction mode of moving electrical document or moving utilities and things like that. But I think we will have enough, relatively soon to pivot to a much clearer presentation on how we see the schedule, the cost and budget, and then how we are doing against those once but getting all the scope and all the design in first is paramount. And we're close to that. But you're right, there are other pre-construction issues that we're continuing to work through.
Yeah, Brian,
Jim, your comment about once we get the 100% design, that we will have no more change orders. That's on the basic scope, but all those, the other work that we're doing for the utilities, whether it be PG&E or railroad, those have not yet been completed. So we'll still get change orders on those.
Yeah, that's bothersome to me. To me, when you complete a design, you take into consideration utility locations, et cetera. So that's got to be part of the design. I'm a little confused as to why that's not part of our design package, that we've been working with the utilities, the railroads, or whatever, to figure out what those conflicts are in advance before completing the design. Doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, my best answer to that is that, we have had many scope changes since the original bids were let. We have worked, the third parties have dictated a lot of scope changes, and we have executed those now through the design for those scopes. But it is also true that where we have a specific process with the railroads on how we work through with them on places we interact with them. And sometimes those require on the ground changes. I mean, that's just part of it. And sometimes that's also true when you're moving a utility. And so they tend to not be the size or scope of the massive structures we build, but they're just part of what we have to get through to finish the pre-construction work. You will see in the CVSR report that I think we report on the status of where we are in electric utility relocation stuff. And generally, 60% or more of that is underway or completed. And so we are moving through that on each segment. But there is some risk still on some of those things where we get final design approval by a third party that sometimes we still have to make changes to. I mean, that does happen. But again, we're working to clear all that stuff in real time. And again, we're 60% plus through that on the utility relocation stuff.
I understand it may happen, but in my world, what we do is, our engineers sit down with the utilities, et cetera, figure out where the conflicts are. And the design work is then done to either avoid the conflict or adjust the conflict, but it's part of the overall design. So we know going in what it's going to be. Now, granted, if you dig up something and you find something that no one knew was there may be a change order for that, but that's usually a minor situation.
Yeah. I'll agree to that. I'll just say that, as you know, Jim, as we discussed before, there were significant scope changes post-bid on this. And as we land those scope changes and finish those designs, those sometimes will impact the utility and the third-party issues with railroads and others. And so we have to account for all of that when we finalize the scope.
Now, that's the problem with doing design build, because you're just guessing as to what your cost is, et cetera. And that's the fallacy of the starting of this project. People didn't even really know what it was going to cost.
I think that's a good reason to pivot to, again, as we have proposed in our business plan in terms of how we can get to construction on the next segments. We're looking at a much more incremental approach, that we're first going to do the advanced design work. We're going to get the right of way in hand and take care of all the pre-construction stuff.
No, Brian, I agree. I know we've had past mistakes that we're trying to go back and correct. And I agree we're on the right track to get the design work done so we can finalize where we think the final numbers are going to be, so the public knows.
Yes. And again, I will be doing I did the May construction update that was well received by the board. We're going to do those quarterly, and the next one I'll bring to the board on each of the CPs in detail will be at our October hearing.
Thank you.
Brian, is there any way to put more resources into the third parties to help accelerate that which is unclear as to what costs may be, because we aren't far enough along? I think we started out, we've got something like over 2,000 relocations. So if we're at 60% or so, or maybe 1,200, we've still got 800 out there. And that is the uncertainty I think that everybody is feeling, and I know you do also. Is there a way that can we accelerate with additional personnel or consultants working with the third parties to put numbers that we can rely upon for those which have not been defined yet?
Tom, I'll come back to you on that. I don't know that it's a personnel resource issue right now. I mean, because as I said, we are advancing them at a pretty good clip in terms of that stuff. There's just a lot. And once we finalize the base structure design, then the other issues are the ones we have to get to. Daniel, do you want to jump in on that question?
Yeah, I agree, Brian. It's not a resource issue. With some of the utility companies like PG&E and AT&T, you can only use their nominated designers and nominated subcontractors. So sometimes there is a resource constraint because there's not enough nominated subcontractors. But we are working closely with PG&E and AT&T to resolve those issues.
Okay. All right. Thanks for the clarification, Brian, and Jim. Thanks for the question, and Ernie also. So, are you still around, Brian Annis? Are you done at this point?
I am still here, but yeah, there's two last components of this flash report: the administrative positions update and the ARA federal match update. And there are no significant updates there. We hired an additional position, but I will end my report there. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Great. Thank you, Brian.
Goodbye.
Any further questions for Brian Annis? Brian, if you need to leave us now, thank you again, and we'll see you at 11 o'clock.
All right.
Great, thank you. Daniel, we'll move on to the Central Valley Status Report. That's section 10 in our binder, so welcome.
Thank you. Okay, I'll work through the summary of the report, and we've highlighted some areas that I'll speak to. And first item is the, as Brian said, construction expenditures. It was for June, we're at 55.9 million, which is an increase of 8 million on May. And the preliminary figures for July are 69 million, which is a good increase. In terms of change orders, during the month, there was 17.6 million in change orders issued. Most of these were issued on the CP2 contract, and some of the bigger ones, there was an $11 million change order issued for additional bonding costs. And there was also a $2.9 million change order issued for extended environmental scope services. Okay, in terms of risk contingency, as Brian said earlier, we've now used that we have 606 or 607 million in risk contingency remaining. And this is again based on the Rev 1 baseline. In terms of designs, as discussed earlier, all designs should be complete by the end of August, early September. That's all the structure and embankment. And we are obviously proceeding rapidly to close out utility designs as well. Construction labor, again, this is a positive trend, an increase from last month. And also we're going to see an increase in July. July, we've gone from June was 1,100 construction workers average, and it looks like our July figure is going to be 1,150, over 1,150. So this is all positive. Construction workers normally translate into additional progress. So it's a good metric to monitor. Okay, next, please. Okay, in terms of structures, underway or substantially completed, we've got 65 out of 93 structures. So we continue to open up structures. Each one of the packages are on target. This is what we're monitoring against, which is positive. In terms of the guideway, the embankment, we got 84 miles of the 119 miles opened up. And anyone who's had the opportunity to visit the CP4 site in particular, it is almost possible now to drive the whole site to 22 miles. So that is very, very positive. We are 1 mile behind the target on CP23. This was because we were unable to provide land in one area. So we are trying to resequence that, and hopefully we will open that mile up next month or the month after. Utility relocations, there's still a lot of work to be done here. We've got 30% relocated already, another 27% in progress, and we have 5% approved to start, but there's still 38% of the utilities to be started. So this is a continuous effort, and we put a lot of focuses and emphasis on this. Okay, the next area is right away. Again, under the leadership of Dennis Kim, we have delivered 30 parcels in June. So this was Dennis Kim's target, and preliminary figures for July indicate we've got 26 parcels. So this is good. However, some of the parcels that we delivered were not the ones we needed. So on CP1, there were 2 parcels that weren't delivered. On CP23, there were 6 parcels that we needed not delivered. Similarly, on CP4, there were 5 parcels that we needed that were not delivered. In each one of these cases, we are working with the contractors to resequence the work. And
Daniel, could I go back to utility relocations for a minute?
of course, Jim.
Do you have a point person for each CP on these things, pushing these things?
Yes, we do. We have a lead utility coordinator, and that person, he or she, has 2 or 3 staff as well. So we're putting a huge focus on this, and the contractors also have a team driving the utilities.
So that person works with the design build team to coordinate all that?
That is correct. Absolutely. And there are weekly meetings.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay.
I have a question as well. Sorry to interrupt there, but when you say not started on these, I'm assuming that means you haven't even given a notice of intent. I thought on a lot of these that where we had identified, we were notifying. Anyway, just explain not started.
So not started means that we haven't got approval to start the works. So we may have design completed, but we haven't got approval from, let's say, PG&E to start work.
Oh, okay. So, all right, because it,
And
Yeah.
in some cases, Nancy, one of the reasons for not being able to start is if we don't have the right of way, we're not allowed to start the works.
understood. Okay, but it doesn't mean that nothing's been done. It just means you haven't been able to actually start
That's correct.
construction in that particular site.
That's correct. In most cases, the design would be significantly advanced.
Right. So maybe you might say that designed but not started, or, give us a little bit more.
Yes.
Since not started looks like maybe nothing's been done, which is not the case. Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Good observation. Thank you. Okay, if we get on to third-party agreements, these are closing out. Third-party agreements are progressing well. There are really no issues. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. Project development, that's the environmental clearance. Again, at the board meeting, you're going to see the Bakersfield to Condale, which is going to be good. So, and that's 80 miles. That'll be another 80 miles cleared, subject to approval. It's very positive. And if we go to the next slide, the next board approval is going to be Board Bank to Los Angeles. So that'll be for 14 miles. And the plan as of today is to bring that to board for approval in December. So that would be another 14 miles cleared. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, this shows the target. Again, the target bars here are based on the cost baseline Rev 1. When we move over the cost baseline Rev 2, these target bars will reduce because obviously we have new completion dates for the packages, which were notified in the business plan. So we had 56 million in June. Looks like we have 69 million as the target for July. So we are moving in a positive direction. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, again, this shows the contingency. We've done a projection here to the end of September, and we're projecting a contingency remainder balance of 463 million by the end of September. Next slide, please. Okay, this is the graph of construction labor. Whilst we did take a dip at the start of the year, that was due to the obviously the weather and to the railroad moratorium. We have steadily increased throughout the year, up to 1,100 construction workers, and it's going to be slightly over 1,150 for July, and we're anticipating August will continue to increase as well. Next slide, please. Okay, this is the graph of structures and guideway. Again, we are achieving our targets. These are all Rev 2 targets. There's just 1 mile of guideway that we failed to deliver this month, but we're confident we will recover that next month. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, this shows the delivery of right-of-way in a little bit more detail. It shows that we delivered 30 parcels to the design builders in June. July, it looks like we have 26, and the target going forward is to deliver 30 parcels per month. This is obviously a big challenge, but so far under the leadership of Dennis Kim, we're achieving 30 per month.
Daniel, can I just make a comment on this real quick?
Of course.
I just want to, right away is a challenging thing because it takes a lot of time to get through that process. But I do want to acknowledge the right-of-way division and Dennis Kim's leadership on that. In the last 4 months, they've been able to execute 111, deliver 111 parcels, which is a pace that we hadn't seen in some time. And so I just want to acknowledge their work. We spent a lot of time on putting in place new emphasis on short-term, mid-term, and long-term goals there, and I think it's having an effect. I think Dennis's work as the lead down there has been terrific. I will say it's important to note that as we go forward, some of these are more complex and will start to take a little bit longer, and that 30-month pace will get more challenging on some of these where we have maybe a difficult landowner that's going to take more time. So we'll certainly keep people posted on that, but overall, and I'm going to jump ahead from these numbers a little bit because I have some data for the months advanced past these months. We're about 83.5% overall of our right-of-way is now in hand and delivered to the DB. And on CP1, we're closing in on 90%, about 88% there. And the other two have passed the 80% threshold now. So we are advancing this in a very good clip. There are still challenges ahead, and I don't want to in any way minimize that, but I do want to recognize the work of the right-of-way division in Dennis Kim on really advancing this in a big way. So that's all I want to say. Thank you.
Brian, one comment
Yeah.
about that, please.
Yes, sir.
Are these properties that we're trying to take, they acknowledge that I'm sure that they probably acknowledge that we're going to take it, but the price is probably the thing that takes the longest period of time to negotiate.
Typically, yes.
If that's the case, have we ever approached them, realizing we're going to take it anyhow, to rent the property while we negotiate the price on the property?
You know, that's something I have to check with Dennis Kim on, but I would say that as a general matter, there are options, for possession and use before you have the full deal settled, while you're still working out the valuation of the property. And that's part of that process. And so there's a time and place where we go for possession and use of these properties. It's just some of these have, as I said before, ad nauseum, as we've finally gotten all the scope into place and finished the design, you have greater specificity on exactly what you need. And now we're very aggressively working through the process. And working with our right-of-way team, we've got 30, 60, 90, 180-day goals. And Dennis and his team is doing a good job. But I will say we are always trying to be in a place for settlement. The settlement is the quickest path. Sure. So, after we go through the formal appraisals and all that, we really want to try to settle and move them as quickly as we can. And that's been our objective.
When we put into balance the delay cost, the cost of construction not going on, against maybe a rental cost that we could pay them while we're doing it. So I'm just throwing that out there as an alternative.
Yeah, I appreciate that. It's something I'll go back to Dennis Kim on and just see how and if we've done that.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Attorney. Anything else, Stan?
Next slide, please. Okay, this is the railroad parcels. We've got a good relationship with the railroad, so as and when we need the parcels, they are delivered on time. So this is all on target. Next slide. This is the land conveyance. As you can see, land conveyance is progressing very well. 588 land conveyances for the critical packages, i.e. PG&E, SCE, FID, FMFCD. And in addition to this 588 completed conveyances, we probably have another 200 parcels in hand, packages ready, just waiting for the title deeds. So this is an area that we've been able to keep ahead of the curve significantly. So this is good news. Next slide, please. Okay, the agreements, third-party agreements. Big success here is obviously semi-tropic. This has opened up a lot of land and a lot of opportunity for us on CP4. This was one of the last major stumbling blocks. So this is giving us a good opportunity to finish CP4 next summer. So this is a big move forward. The only significant agreements that are outstanding are the City of Wasco, and our Regional Director, Garth Fernandez, is working closely and cooperatively with the City of Wasco to finalize these agreements.
One thing just for the board's edification on the City of Wasco issues, you see that and you're all familiar that one of the issues we've been dealing with there is how to handle the farm worker housing issue on a former farm worker housing site. And that's an issue where we have a pending federal grant that we're hoping to get some help on to be able to address that issue and help free up some of this stuff. But Garth is doing a great job working with Wasco, and we're hopeful that a positive grant determination will help us advance further with the City of Wasco. So
what's the timing on that grant? Right.
I think they will announce the awards this fall. It looks like early November is when they'll announce that. But we continue to work with Wasco on other issues, but that's the big one for us, and we want to see how that resolves before we before we go further on the former farm worker housing site. So it's roughly early November, I believe.
Thanks.
Just one other
Kudos
comment.
to you, Brian, and staff for doing that.
Thank you, Ernie. Just one other comment on this. Daniel did highlight the semi-tropic water storage district. Look, that has been a multi-year negotiation to get an agreement done for how we'll work together going forward. And that's an example of what I was saying earlier, Jim, about once you get this done, we still have work to do with semi-tropic on how we're going to handle some of the areas where we cross their property and what those will look like. And there's an opportunity for them to review and approve design and things like that. So that's an area we've got a broad agreement done, but we will still have work to do with them going forward on specific approvals where we cross their area, and our relationship there will be everything to make sure we can do those quickly and efficiently. So that agreement is a really big deal for us to get that done on how we'll work together. And I'm telling you, it's taken at least 18 months to get that thing done. And so kudos to, again, Dennis Kim and our legal team, Kendall, in our legal office, just tremendous work. So it's an important step for us.
Thanks, Brian. Dennis or Daniel?
Okay, that's it, Tom. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Daniel? Hearing none, members of the committee, that concludes our agenda today. Do any of the members have anything that you want to raise at this point?
So Daniel, nice presentation.
Yeah, I agree. And I.
Thank you, Jim.
That was a very good presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, Ernie.
Great. Thanks, Daniel. All right. With that, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the business of the Finance and Audit Committee this morning. As you may know, and we encourage you to join us at 11 o'clock this morning, we began the August meeting for the High-Speed Rail Authority Board of Directors. The major business that will be addressed as the Bakersfield Palmdale environmental documents. That meeting will start at 11 today, and then there will be a continuing of that meeting tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for being with us, and committee members, thank you for your participation and preparation for this meeting. We'll see everybody at 11 o'clock. This meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.